This recipe is a gluten-free chocolate cake using quinoa. The recipe I got from allrecipes.com, and I'll be posting it on below the video as I usually do. First, we've already cooked the quinoa. I'm using a Ninja for the blender. Really like this product anyway. So it takes 4 eggs, and it takes 3/4 of a cup of melted butter, and 1/3 of a cup of milk, a teaspoon of vanilla, blend that. The recipe calls for 2 cups of cooked quinoa, and then you blend that until smooth. And you want to scrape down the sides of your blender to make sure that you get all the bits of the quinoa, so that when you pour it into your cake tins, it's not chunky. I actually like to over blend mine so that it's super smooth. So now it calls for 1.5 cups of white sugar. I don't actually have white sugar, so I'm going to use brown, so the flavor is going to be a little bit different, but that's not a big deal. And you're going to need to whisk all of these together, so you want to put them in a big enough bowl. So I've got 1.5 cups of sugar, 1 cup of unsweetened powdered cocoa, and then it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. So you just want to whisk all of that together. Now the white sugar is going to be a little easier to use because it's not as moist as the brown sugar, but it should be okay. Once you've whisked your dry ingredients together, you add the blended ingredients, your wet ingredients. And you mix those. This is all nice and smooth, and then it's time for the cake tins. So the recipe calls for 2 prepared cake tins. It says to grease them and use parchment paper, but what I've done instead of parchment paper is that I've coated them with cocoa powder. So then once the batter is done, pour it into your cake tins. So there's the 2 cake tins ready to go in the oven. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees, so in they go. And those cook for between 40 and 45 minutes. So we'll just set the oven to that. So I'm going to make a ganache icing to go on top. What all that is chocolate and heavy whipping cream. And so the recipe that I'm using, I picked up off of the internet. It's 1-to-1. So half a cup of chocolate. I'm using semi-sweet baker's chocolate, and half a cup of whipping cream. So I just chop it up coarsely. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular, but what you're going to do is cut up the chocolate so that the warm whipped cream will melt it. So like I said, it's half a cup. We'll get a rough measurement here. And it looks like it's going to be the whole brick, which is okay. It just makes it nice and chocolatey. And then half a cup of whipping cream. Now I'm going to put it in this larger one after I've measured it out so that I can put it in the microwave. Now you want to heat the whipped cream up, but not make it boil. You just want to make it warm so that it melts the chocolate, and you don't want to overheat it. So you need to keep a very close eye on the whipped cream if you're doing it in the microwave. You can do it on the stove. The microwave is just faster. So once the whipped cream is warm, then you want to add that to the chocolate, and then let the heat of the whipped cream begin to melt the chocolate. So just let it sit for a while, 5-10 minutes, and once then that begins, then start whisking or stirring, beginning in the center until it's all blended and smooth. And then you've got your ganache. So once that's had an opportunity to sit for a little while, do a little stir, and the chocolate will blend into the cream.
Oh, that looks nice.
Yeah. So maybe what I'll do now, it's nice and smooth, but I'll put it in the fridge and cool it down, and it'll be nice and thick for spreading on the cakes. So one thing that I usually do, instead of doing a layer of ganache between the two cakes, is I make a fruit coulis. Usually it's raspberries, but I've got a mixed berry blend here. So it's just berries and sugar cooked on the stovetop until it's jam-like, and then that goes in between the layers of the cakes. So the cake is done, at least initially, but we'll check it just with a regular toothpick. That comes out nice and clean, so it's done. I'll take the second one out. There we are. And we'll just let them cool for a little bit. Okay, so the cakes are done, and we'll just pop them out. And with the cocoa powder lining the tray, you see they just pop right out very, very easily. And we'll put them on this platter. So the fruit coulis is done, and we'll just pour that right on top. and spread it about a bit. Now this is just a thin layer. You can make it as thick or as thin as you like. Just keep in mind that the thicker it gets, the harder it's going to be to cut later. So there's that. And we'll put the second layer on top. I just broke that. That's okay. Okay, and we've got our ganache out of the fridge, and it's set up quite nice, and we'll just pour that right on top. Spread it about. Just let it pour over the sides. And there, we get that at the bottom, so it looks very nice as well. Well, I think it looks nice until it gets to the edge of the plate, I guess. But there, that's done. Please go on YouTube and click subscribe, provide your comments and feedback on this, and keep looking out for more recipes.